So how do you get past the fear that you might do something that means so much to you and you might actually fail along the way? Well, that's what we're talking about on today's episode of Good Life Project Jam Sessions. One of the biggest questions that I get asked on a regular basis is, how do you deal with fear? How do you keep building new things, creating new things, when you know that you just may fail? How do you keep making the decisions and taking actions, allocating time, money, and resources to these projects when you don't know it's going to succeed? And if you're even doing it publicly, how do you deal with the fact that you may be judged for failing if, in fact, it doesn't work? Well, these are some of the biggest hindrances to people actually going out in the world and doing the things that they're here to do. There are all sorts of ways to deal with this, and I talk about many of them, but today I really want to focus on one specific technique, and it's something called reframing. This is something where you may have seen it in all different parts of the world, but it comes actually out of the more of the therapeutic world, and there's a fancy name for it there. It's called cognitive reappraisal. But it's fundamentally acknowledging a few things. Number one, taking a look at an opportunity that's in front of you and saying, there's something powerful here, but for me to actually build around it, I will need to take actions and make decisions that will put me at risk. I don't know how it's going to end, and then still be able to do it. When we do that, we may not be able to change the circumstances of that situation. In fact, we really don't want to, because the fact that we don't know how it's going to end is also a signpost that there's the potential to create something new in the world, something meaningful for you and for everybody else. So how do we handle that place? Well, the reframe looks at the stories that we're telling about this possibility. You see, we tend to tell stories about these scenarios that either paralyze us or mobilize us. And because the way our brains work, we're very protective. We tend to default to the negative stories that paralyze us. This is a phenomenon called the negativity bias. We like to always focus on what can go wrong. And that's a valid question to ask and a valid story to tell. But you gotta move beyond that, and it's called reframing by asking different questions and telling different stories. We may not change the circumstance itself, but we can change the way we experience the circumstance. We can change the stories we tell about this circumstance, and in doing so, move from a state of paralysis and fear to a place of mobilization and action. So let's look at some examples of some major reframes. One of the biggest things that happens in life is we go through scenarios where there's a huge amount of disruption. So for example, when we look back at that window from 2008 to 2009, yes, in the beginning there was a massive amount of disruption and pain and suffering. People were out of jobs, careers were changed and ended. But what we started to experience as a country and individually was that as we started to emerge from that, a lot of people then began to actually retrain. They began to explore careers that a lot of them wanted to do for years or decades, but never felt that they would have given themselves permission to do, or the people around them would have given themselves permission to do. And they entered careers that for the first time in their lives actually allowed them to come alive on a level that they had never experienced before. That same window, while it was very destructive in some ways economically, spurred one of the greatest waves of entrepreneurship that this country has seen in decades. And from that entrepreneurship, new visions, new companies, new jobs, innovation, which is extraordinary, will affect millions and millions of people, has come. So this all comes from people who are willing to move through that reframe, looking at this disruptive circumstance that they can't change as not just disruption and pain, but a place of fertile ground for possibility and opportunity. So our jobs are to look at the experiences in our own lives and look at the things where we see disruption and pain and negative storylines and zoom the lens out and say, where is the possibility? And move on from there. So there may be disruption and there's a shaking, but anytime there's a shaking never comes without possibility. So I have to go and find the possibility. So instead of saying disruption is bad, disruption is terrible, disruption is going to destroy me, you say disruption is the seed of innovation. It's the seed of possibility and opportunity. My job now is to find that because it exists for sure, And if I can tap into it, I may be able to create something that nobody's ever done before. I may be able to bring new joy, new possibilities, new career paths, new ideas into my life, my existence, my world, and then share it with other people in a way that I've never been able to before. Because this disruption has opened a doorway to possibility. So we move from a storyline of I'm being disrupted, I'm in pain, I'm just doom and gloom and there's no way out, to disruption never comes without opportunity. How can I find the possibility? So that's one major reframe. A second reframe that kills a lot of movement and a lot of people from moving into things that they really love to do is a reframe around judgment. So a lot of people look at an opportunity, they say, well, what if I fail? What if I fail is a combination of two things. It's a fear of risk of loss, and that can be loss of money, power, prestige, brand equity, whatever it may be, and fear of being judged and ostracized. So let's talk about those two separately. We can do two separate reframes for those. So the question goes, if I fail here, I will be judged and shunned and kicked out. And that will be the end for me. No more opportunity, no more profession, no more life, no relationships, doom and gloom, living on an island, isolated, ostracized from the world. You want to tell that story, but you also need to ask a different question. Instead of saying, I will be judged and ostracized, the different frame on that is, if I fail, what an extraordinary opportunity for me to understand why I failed, understand how to do it better, and then apply this new knowledge to the next iteration of my path. And in fact, that's the fundamental basis of the practice of entrepreneurship. There is almost no entrepreneur that's been in the game and has never failed. And in fact, in the world of entrepreneurship, especially in the tech space, it's understood that you will in fact fail. You may fail multiple times, and that experience has extraordinary value because it informs you and accelerates your journey to bigger and better and faster successes. So yes, if you fail, some people may judge you. But if you fail, you'll also learn an extraordinary amount about how to do it better and build something bigger and more significant as you progress. So if you can parse and separate the emotion from the data and say, failure also gives me extraordinary data, which makes me be able to do better down the road, I can look at this as not just an opportunity to be ostracized and judged, but an opportunity to grow and learn and get better. The other part of that puzzle was fear of risk of loss. What if I lose my money, my power, my prestige? And this is a really important thing to explore. That's the storyline that most people tell, the negativity bias. What if I fail? It's important to ask that question and identify a storyline around it. What if I do fail? But then add a few other questions that allow you to fill out the story. Add, how will I recover? And build out that storyline. What most people will find is that it is recoverable. Then add, what if I do nothing? What's the sideways scenario? What if I just sit back and don't even take advantage of this? That very often is the far more horrifying scenario because there's no sideways in life. There's only a progressive downward slide if you don't apply energy to move up. And the final question, which finishes your ability to tell a positive storyline, is what if I succeed? And tell an equally vivid story around that. So now we look at judgment and we say, yes, I may feel some pain of being judged, but at the same time, I'm gonna learn, I'm gonna grow, I'm gonna become smarter, better, and faster at getting really good at this and succeeding on a whole different level. And then instead of just what if I fail, it's yes, I may fail, but I will recover. Here's how I will recover. If I don't do this and I just go sideways, this is really not gonna be pretty. And what if I succeed? What does that story look like? So this is a really powerful reframe that allows us to, instead of tell a story that paralyzes us, it mobilizes and empowers us to take action on the things that are most important to us. So explore this idea of the reframe. Look at opportunities where we don't know how things are going to end, but there's possibility. Where there's a circumstance that you have to move into and make bold decisions and take bold actions, you don't know how it's going to end. There's risk, there's uncertainty. And tell a different story. Ask yourself, what's the story that I'm telling? Is it mobilizing or paralyzing me? And can I tell a different story? Can I reframe it to move from paralysis to action and success? So I hope you found this conversation around opportunity and reframing as a way to move past fear valuable in your quest to build something extraordinary in the world. If you found it valuable, then go ahead and enter your email address in the form on this page so you don't miss any future episodes. And if you think anybody else might really enjoy this as well, then feel free to share it. I'm Jonathan Fields, signing off.